So just a quick primer in terms of before we get specifically into bird language, I want to just make known that really bird language is just a subset of animal language. And the reason it's so important is that when you start studying animal language, it really revolutionizes your understanding of the natural world because you start finding out how much that we've been missing. And I give a quick example of if you grew up, let's say, in a house and you had some sort of foreign family who moved in with you, you didn't understand their language, and then you left home and you went off to school somewhere, you studied that language and you came back, and then all of a sudden you realized everything they had been saying that you were missing, that, you know, someone had left a package at your door, someone had maybe tried to break into your house, your brother stole your allowance, whatever it is, someone put it, cooked something for you, left a meal out for you, all these messages you were missing. And so it's really, for me, I don't think you can have a really full-fledged understanding of the natural world, certainly when it comes to biology, without understanding, to some extent, animal language. Another great thing about it is it's an activity you can do anywhere you are, anywhere outside. And that doesn't mean just whether it's, you know, you're in the tropics or you're in a temperate region, but even in a cityscape. I have an office in a city and I see bird language going on all the time around me. I talk to some of my colleagues. It can be in a local park, your backyard, and obviously when you're in a wilderness setting, it's fantastic there. And you can do it really any time of the day, any time of the year. There may be a few exceptions up at the poles if you're out in the ocean. Obviously, there's not many songbirds, but other than that, you know, you can practice animal language, bird language anywhere. It also doesn't require any special equipment. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to have any specific knowledge. But whatever you come to the table with, whether you're an experienced outdoorsman or not, it's going to enhance any of your other activities that you do. The other great thing about it is that it's really good to do with your friends or family. Okay. So you can go out and, you know, take kids out, your parents, again, they don't have to have, you know, a lot of outdoor experience. They can tune into it very quickly. And for everybody, it really deepens their connection to nature. Bird language in particular is probably my favorite of all the outdoor disciplines, just because there's always something different that happens. There's always something going on. I'm constantly learning. Even this morning when I was drinking some tea in my backyard before I started work, there's something happened and, you know, I added a little bit to my own knowledge. So that's one of the great things. It's a lifelong thing that you can do that also reduces stress. It's relaxing and it's really fun. So I think you'll get a lot out of it when you start the journey. So what can you do when you learn animal language? Okay. Well, the first thing is it helps you decipher behavior, but not just what animals are doing, but why they are doing it. So a lot of times, you know, we may see them doing a particular activity or action, but we don't really know why they're doing it. And when you start understanding animal language, then you start being able to connect the why, and you start being able to think like an animal. It also allows you to move through whatever type of landscape that you happen to live in to be maybe not completely undetected, but to enable you to move through an area without scaring other animals, right? And causing fewer disturbances. And there's some lessons I teach in this course and other courses that teach us specifically how to do that. But even just knowing the basics of animal language and bird language will help you create fewer disturbances on the land. And because of that, you'll be able to get closer to wildlife without scaring it off. It doesn't matter whether you're going out and you're just, let's say, hiking, you're doing photography, you're a scientist, whatever the case is, you're going to get closer and see more wildlife than you would otherwise. And it also, for predators, enables you to determine potentially where they are on the landscape. Even if you never see them, you'll see the signs that they're there when they're moving about or when they're hunting and about to launch an attack on an animal. So again, it's just great because it makes everything come alive going on around you that previously, or if you don't utilize these skills, that you're very likely to miss. So let's look a little more at what exactly is bird language specifically, okay? So I mentioned earlier, it's a subset of animal language. And the reason that we focus on it so much, and I do in my course and John Young does, is that it's really the easiest one to tune into because, again, virtually almost every continent where people live, there's songbirds around. They're all around us. They're constantly around all times of year, maybe in extreme northern latitudes or southern latitudes, not as much in the winter. But they're easily visible, right? And they make their presence known. They're also very audible, and the range of our hearing almost identically matches the range that songbirds can utter vocalization. So we're just perfectly attuned to hearing them. And again, unlike having eyes, you can close your eyes. You can't close your ears. Now, you can choose not to listen or tune in, but the messages are coming in all the time. So it's a great way to tune into. And that's why I think birds are the best in terms of learning animal language. So I mentioned, yeah, they're found everywhere and they're visible, easy to hear. And again, if you just sort of quiet your mind, you can tune into them, right? You also, not only hearing them, you can observe and watch them. It's just a matter of where your attention is and where you want to place that attention. Birds also have a very sophisticated communication mechanism or network. And really, science is catching up on this now, particularly with certain species, but really all of them, they encode a tremendous amount of information. In fact, there's some species like parrots, which are the chickadees and titmice, that they think the potential, I'm not saying they've done this, but their potential is to be able to encode almost maybe half as much as humans do in our language, which is just amazing when you think about the size of their brains. So even though it is complicated and, we don't understand everything that they do, we're still making a lot of discoveries. In the past, through the millennia, humans have tuned into this and they did learn it, and you can learn it. And in fact, the science is really just catching up now with what ancient humans knew. And there's still a few traditional or primitive tribes in the world who still really depend on it for their survival. Okay. So how can you start becoming skilled at bird language? Well, the first thing I would advise you to do is anytime you go outside, again, doesn't matter whether it's your, house at home, apartment, you live in a city, whatever, try to ground yourself in your surroundings. I know we're all busy these days, but if you can even take just a moment or two, literally could be 5-10 seconds, just to stop, calm your mind, and just say, hey, I'm going to tune in. I'm going to pay attention to what's going on around me, both visually and audibly. Okay. You can do a sense meditation. Again, this is something I cover in some other lessons if you have the time, but basically that's just a quick practice to engage your eyes, engage your ears, engage your kinesthetics of, where the wind's coming from, tuning into all the environmental conditions around you. That just helps you become more alert and much more likely to catch anything that's going on. You can also do something called follow the honoring routine. Okay. And this is something that John Young talks about. Basically, when you're out in nature, it's a way of moving or carrying yourself to not disturb wildlife as much. And so specifically, that's doing things like not staring at animals when you see them, because again, we're predators, we have binocular vision, our eyes are in the front of our head. So, we create a lot of fear. We're an apex predator on the landscape. It's doing things like rerouting, going around animals if they're in front of you, if they're in the path ahead of you, including songbirds and some other keys like that, which again, it will just help you not create as many disturbances or alarms on the landscape. And then also, just anytime you go outside or you're moving into a new area, just stop for a few minutes and do what I call take stock of the situation. Just listen to see what's going on, look to see if there's anything going on before you just barge into an area. And that also includes, again, I mentioned being conscious of the environmental conditions. Obviously, animals are very much affected by that, time of year, temperature, cloudy, rainy, etc. And also notice just what is the overall level of activity and what's it maybe today versus yesterday or a different time of day, or maybe if you're in a different place, what it normally is where you go. And then also take stock of any noises or disturbances. And that could be from other animals, but it also could be from machines or other people. Again, we're so tuned into that that we actually kind of tune it out. We don't pay as much attention to it because we're used to it. And some animals and birds are as well, but still they pay a lot more attention to that than we do because it can be dangerous for them, right? And it can affect their day-to-day behavior and activities. Okay, let's look now at some of the keys about how you actually go about interpreting what birds are trying to tell you. Okay, so the first thing is you want to notice whether when you go outside, anywhere you are songbirds readily visible? And I'm using the term songbirds, by the way, because we're not talking as much about shorebirds or seabirds. There is some bird language involved there, but songbirds really are the ones that we want to tune into because for one thing, again, they're almost everywhere. The other thing too is that they're constantly communicating, right? And they're prey animals, so they're constantly on the lookout for danger. So you want to see if when you step outside, are they all around you? Are they there? Or are they not there? And then are they singing? Okay, that's a really important thing because when songbirds are singing, it usually means that they're comfortable. When they're not, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it can mean something else. Are they doing other activities like preening? Okay, like cleaning their feathers? Are they feeding? They could be even fighting each other. And when we're talking about fighting, we're not talking about whether one bird is trying to necessarily kill another bird, but they might be fighting over food or a piece of territory. Okay, or they could be engaged in mating behavior. Okay, so these are the initial things you want to look for because these are what their typical behaviors are. Okay, and they're what we refer to as baseline behavior. Okay, so when songbirds are doing this, they're in what would be considered a comfortable situation or doing the normal activities, just like you and I would. When we wake up in the morning, we get dressed, we shower, we get food, we get ready to go to work or study or whatever the case is. Okay, those are the things that we, in a sense, want to be doing. And so in that case, we are, not in a high stress situation. We're not feeling threatened. We're not in survival mode, okay, where our very life is at stake. Okay. And again, in that mode, we're going to be carrying out just the normal day-to-day duties. Okay. All the things that we need to be doing and that we want to be doing and get completed. Okay. The other thing about songbirds, and this is just generally true for any animal species or any biological species, is that, and humans are kind of the one exception to this, but for most animals, conservation of energy, determines whether they live or die in many respects. And so they're not going to waste time or energy on non-productive activities. So any of these aforementioned activities are things that they need to be doing, and they're not going to do things that take time away from that. Okay, so when they're doing these things, it means they feel comfortable and that predators are not around, or if they are around, they're keeping an eye on them. They know they're not hunting. In other words, they're not a threat at that moment in time. Okay, so another way of looking at this is that when you go outside, you want to think, what is the gestalt of songbird activity? And what I mean by that is, what is the overall meaning when kind of the sum is greater than the parts, right? When you look at everything put together, what can you glean from that? Okay. Are birds out singing? Do they appear, if you want to say happy, which a lot of people think they do when songbirds are singing? Perhaps, again, they're feeding, they're trying to stay warm. Again, this would be a baseline behavior. They might be at a feeder, in addition to being on the ground, or maybe they're gathering nesting material. Okay. Or again, they could be jostling over territory, might be some food source, what have you. So you want to just get an idea of the overall picture of that. And one of the, I don't want to say limitations, but I think it is a trap that oftentimes people who are very invested in birding get into is it's very easy to become myopic and just focus on an individual bird behavior or one particular species. And you kind of miss this overall picture. And I've seen this a number of different times. There might be some amazing thing going on, some huge bird alarm, but because you can't see the forest for the trees, you're so focused on one piece of it that you miss that. And so again, bird language, we want to get that gestalt of everything that's happening. Okay. Now, Specifically, once you start getting good at baseline behavior, okay, and you understand, what that is, you're noticing what, when that's occurring, and then you start noticing when it's not occurring. And there's some specific things that you want to be on the lookout for. And these are really easy to observe if you just pay attention to them. And when you do, it just changes everything, because this is when you start noticing other things going on in the landscape, other animals, predator attacks that are starting to occur. Okay, so the first thing is you want to notice, are birds posting up at the very top, let's say, of a tree? Okay, or it could even be a shrub, could be a power line, a telephone pole, could be the roof of a building, and just kind of sitting there looking. They're not singing, they're not preening. Oftentimes they're looking in one particular direction. Okay, and you want to notice that. And a lot of times people mistake that for, a bird that's resting, right? Or is just bored. But when you see this, you want to pay special attention to that. Okay, we have a name for that. It's called the sentinel behavior. Okay, you may see a group of them as well. It's very common. I saw it this morning, where you see them on a power line. They're all looking in the same direction typically, and you might even see them leaning, almost like they're vested, looking in a certain direction. Okay, you may also see a bird somewhere in a tree, a shrub, and they're actually making an alarm call. Okay, they're not singing this beautiful melodious sound that we're all used to, but instead they're making some sort of squawking noise, right? It's usually quick, sharp, kind of staccato oftentimes. Okay, that's something you want to observe. You also want to observe if you have, and oftentimes it's a mixed flock. That's one of the best ways to determine this, in a particular tree, and they may be surrounding something else. Oftentimes they're making a lot of noise. They're making these calls. Again, it's not usually singing, it's other calls. They may be moving around, changing positions, looking very agitated. That's something you absolutely want to pay attention to. And then finally, if you see any sort of mass exodus of birds, and actually it doesn't even have to be a lot of birds, it can be one or two, but oftentimes they'll dart off. And birds actually have a different way of flying. Sometimes when they are relaxed and they're just moving from, let's say, one feeding source to the other, you'll see them fly up, a little higher, maybe 50, 100 feet off the ground. Other times, though, you'll see them like just go maybe 15 feet off the ground, and they're going from A to B, and they just disappear. You can't see them anymore. So when you see that, or you see a big exodus and they're all going in the same direction, maybe you see several different flocks do it, one and then the next one and the next one, that's something you want to pay special attention to. Okay, you also want to be on the lookout for birds that might be hiding. Now, granted, this is hard to see if you're just trying to go out and find that, because birds are masters at hiding. In fact, one of the things, when you pay attention at the end of the day, when they go to roost, it's very difficult to find birds. I mean, they're still there. I mean, a lot of them still live in the canopy and spend the night up there, but it's incredible how invisible they can make themselves. Okay, but sometimes when you see a bird leave, or it might be on a fence post or something, and it darts down into a bush, you'll see that it'll go and it'll hide, just like this bird is. Okay, or you might see it on the ground and it'll just actually freeze. It won't move. Maybe it was feeding before, which is what they're usually doing when they're on the ground, and suddenly it just stops, becomes like a statue, and it may stay there for a number of minutes. Okay, that's a big clue. Another one, and this is one that's just so commonly overlooked, okay, in a park, or just, let's say, somewhere outside, you're sitting, all of a sudden you have a group of birds, and again, it could be a mixed flock. Maybe they're feeding, they're out away from you, 15 feet, 15 yards, whatever. All of a sudden they start coming closer, a bunch of them. And they may do that and become still at the same time. And you may think, wow, I'm this incredibly peaceful person. These birds just really like me, but actually probably not. It typically means there's a predator in the area. Okay. And then the final thing is that when you're in an area that normally should have a lot of songbirds. So for instance, this vista here, it's springtime, early summer, everything's really green. Maybe let's say it's late morning, even if it's in the early afternoon, that time of year, it's not too hot. There should be birds moving around, singing some, particularly in the morning. And you look around, you notice you can't see a single bird, not one. right? Or maybe you see a few and then you see a few less, and then a minute or two later, they're almost all gone, okay? And also what goes along with that, and this is the easiest thing to tune into in bird language, it's also the easiest thing to miss, is that everything is deadly quiet, okay? Now, there are normal ebbs and flows in bird behavior. Any ornithologist will tell you that, anyone who's been doing birding for a long time. But there are a lot of these abnormal periods where suddenly everything just stops, okay? And during that time, this period of quiet, it might only be a couple of minutes. I've seen it last as long as 15 or 20 minutes. And then typically when it comes back, it starts coming back a little slowly. Some species come back first and then others. That is a real key that something is going on, okay? And that's what you want to tune into, okay? So when you're doing all this, how do you basically analyze the behaviors that you see that I'm just talking about? Well, the first thing is that if they're in baseline, what you want to do is you just start wanting to watch and learn those behaviors for a particular species. And if you can, actually, you want to actually do it for an individual bird. That's even better. Get to know one bird, and you'll start learning when that bird is actually in a period of baseline behavior or non-baseline, and you'll be able to differentiate that bird. Okay, so the next thing is when you're looking at the behavior, you want to get to know, how do they interact with other species? And again, the reason we want to do all this is you just get to know more about songbird behavior, but you get to distinguish when they're in this baseline and non-baseline mode. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, pick an individual bird and you can try to figure out everything. When does it come out? Where is its territory? Where does it make the rounds? And again, this would be if it's during breeding season and you have a bird that nests there, or if it's a resident bird. Try to figure out its boundaries, right? Where does it fight off challenges to other birds? Where does it go to feed? What habitats does it prefer? Okay. Generally speaking, obviously birds of the same species will act similarly, but individuals have their own behaviors, their own idiosyncrasies, just like we do as humans. And if you want to say they have their own personalities, I know a lot of scientists don't like this idea of anthropomorphizing, but actually it's really good when it comes to bird behavior because you can interpret a lot. You're not going to be right every time, but I found that actually you can make a lot of deductions that end up being accurate, okay? And again, in addition to its boundaries and areas, you want to determine its no-go areas. Where does that bird stay out of? And, there's some obvious things. If it's a canopy species, you're rarely going to see them on the ground. So if you did see them on the ground, that might tell you something. That's a very important piece of information that they're not in baseline. Okay, if they are out of baseline and you notice that, some of the things that we talked about earlier, the first thing you want to do is try to ascertain what is causing that, okay? Invariably, it means that there's a threat going on, okay? This is what we term as alarm behavior. So look around. The most dire threat to songbirds is actually other bird hunting specialists, and they're types of raptors called accipiters, okay? They're bird hunting specialists. So there's many different species of hawks. Virtually almost all of them will hunt birds from time to time, but the vast majority of them, particularly the larger raptors, are not bird hunting specialists. But these accipiters like Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, goshawks, they specialize, as well as even some species of smaller owls, in catching and eating birds. Okay, they're dire threats to birds. So when you see something out of baseline, you want to look around. You want to see, very often now, when I see these signs out of baseline, I look around, I know there's a hawk in the air. I can generally tell where it is. It doesn't always come immediately in my area, but I would say about, 25, 30% of the time it does, and I see it moments later. I've even had experiences where, I'm telling someone, I'm like, hey, just reading and I know it's close. And I'll say, hey, look, a hawk's about to show up. And, people's jaw kind of drops, and sure enough, an accipiter flies right through. And before I did bird language, actually, I really didn't even know much about accipiters. I almost never saw them because they're masters of staying hidden. But when you start tuning into these out of baseline characteristics, then you'll start seeing them just constantly, okay? If you witness one of these disturbances, in addition to looking for the source, as we just talked about, try to figure out the direction it came from. And again, as you get good at this, you can figure it out beforehand, right? But even if, afterwards, try to piece it together and go, oh, okay, it came from the east. Okay, well, what did I see over there? So that the next time maybe you see that same sort of behavior, birds pointing in a certain direction, flying away in a certain direction, and you can figure that out. Then also notice specifically, how did the songbirds respond? When this threat was coming in, maybe they had enough time to react to it, right? And they were able to hide, fly away. Maybe they didn't. Sometimes these attacks come in unannounced, right? And it's just, you may even hear the death cry, what's called the zeet sound sometimes, okay? So you just want to notice. And again, I talked about they may do other things like, they may freeze, right on the ground in front of you, okay? And again, you want to try to see what that predator is. Now, it's not always going to be a raptor. It's not always an accipiter, okay? It can be many other types of predators, number of ground predators, and then you kind of get this crossover of ground predators who can get up into trees, right? Like snakes, cats can, raccoons that are maybe nest robbing, right? So anyway, whatever the signature that you saw was, you want to kind of hone in on it and figure out who that was. And, one of the easiest ones to figure out is a hunting cat. Probably everyone has seen, say a mockingbird, something that's heckling a cat moving through an area. And so there are other instances, though, where a cat is actively hunting, moving through brush, other wild canines as well, coyotes, foxes, and birds will give these signature alarms. I go into it in my other lessons, what these specific alarm behaviors are. But even if you don't know those, you can tune in to the general alarm pattern and oftentimes catch the predator. Okay, let's look at some other things that you do when they're out of baseline, okay? When you see a disturbance, if you can and you have the time, wait for it to pass all the way through. Okay, some of them, again, are very fast. Some of them may take 20, 30 minutes to resume, particularly, let's say, if it's a hunting hawk and it stays in the area. Bird activity or baseline activity can stay suppressed for a long time. So you want to see how long does that actually take for it to come back, okay? And then ideally, you want to notice which species first resume and which are the last ones to come back. Again, it's just overall part of the education, but more importantly is like when you get to know that and let's say you didn't even see the attack, but you just happen, you were inside, you come outside and things are quiet, and then you notice that this particular species, let's say the juncos, are the first ones to come back, or maybe the last ones to come back, and oh, you know what? That signals a bird alarm. I've seen that before. So these are all telling points, okay? If you can, try to find evidence of the actual predator. Oftentimes, again, if you're paying attention, as you get good at this, you'll see the accipiter or the hawk, flying through an area, okay? If it's a ground-based animal and you have good substrate, you might be able to find fresh tracks of the animal. And again, you might be able to locate it in a tree. If it's a successful attack, which usually it isn't, but if it is by an accipiter, you might even find predation remains, which are usually just going to be a clump of feathers scattered about, okay? So again, that just reinforces the patterns in your mind. I tell people all the time teaching these classes, there's so much being said today about artificial intelligence, and it's mostly, if not all, based on pattern matching. Well, we have this automatically built into our brains, and our ancestors all had this, and to a large extent we don't use this anymore, but we can reactivate that. And then just pay attention to any other similar disturbances or other patterns that you see. Again, all part of this pattern matching and reinforcing, kind of forming those neural networks. And then as you do that over time, you'll get really good at comparing different situations that you've seen and drawing conclusions, saying, you know what, I've seen this before. These birds leave, they go over here, then it gets quiet. Hey, I know that's my local Cooper's hawk that's causing that, okay? And it gets really fun after a while, because then you can actually start to predict it, or when the neighbor's cat is going hunting, right? So it's fantastic. And you'd be surprised how quickly you can learn this. It's just putting the time in. Okay, so if that sounds of interest to you, I wanted to just say a couple of things. And one is that I actually teach these weekly lessons, not just in bird language, but in these other skills, and what's called my Naturalist training program. Okay. Bird language is one of the main ones. So if you're interested in this and learning more, you can sign up in that. Here's a link to it. I'll also put this in the chat before we finish. Okay. And basically, you get a weekly lesson, just like I was teaching here. It's in one of these disciplines, usually in tracking, some sort of bird animal language, survival, foraging, and other related naturalist topics. Okay. It's amazing. It's one of these things where you don't have to drink from a fire hose. You can just watch a video. It's one or two videos, usually about 20 minutes a week, something like that, but something you can digest and go put into practice. And so it's just a great way of learning. It builds over time. And again, it gives you some time to go and put it into practice if you want to. Okay. All the lessons are taught by someone who's an expert. Okay. So I teach some of them. I have a survival instructor. It's great content. And again, it's very practical based. It's not something, you don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be Grizzly Adams living in the wilderness. Okay. It's something you can do right where you live. Okay. You also get access to Naturalist Speak community. So you can post your own images or videos of things that you find. Occasionally I put challenges in there that you can respond to, and you just interact with other members in the community. So a great way to exchange, what learnings and ask questions of other people. And again, it's online. You can access it, whenever you want to on your time. Okay. Things are posted regularly once a week. And so you can do that whenever you want. Okay. And again, it just reinforces, we cover new topics all the time, but it builds. It doesn't matter when you join, you can kind of just jump in. There are some initial lessons that are always there. So no matter when you start, it can kind of get you up to speed, and then you can just jump in and move through the content as it drops every week. So just an example, some of the things that are in there, like for example, wildlife tracking. We get into a lot of details on this. I can remember when I first started tracking, I was a big backpacker. I went out and I was like, oh, look at all these mountain lion tracks, right? I was in a well-known wilderness setting. And I came back and then I started studying tracking. I was like, no, those are actually dogs. Those are canines, right? And now I could prove that they were canines. And so we teach you specific techniques, get in there so you can actually look in morphology of a track, and almost guaranteed, if you have a good track, determine what the species is. In addition, what the behaviors are. Was it in what we call baseline mode, just like with birds? Was it fleeing danger? Was it potentially hunting? Was it waiting to ambush? Whatever it is. So I love tracking, and one of my favorite subjects as well. Also, wilderness survival, just some really practical things, some to do in emergency situations, to get you out of trouble. If you had to spend the night, how could you build a shelter or make an emergency fire or find water, signal for rescue, et cetera. Just very practical base things that you can do, and some funner things as well if you want to go beyond that. But a lot of it is just, people who spend time hiking or do long backpacks or out hunting, the weather changes, just things to help keep you safe. Again, with bird and animal language, we really get into the details so that you get to know some things like this where, hey, there's certain disturbances or alarms that happen. What does that look like along the landscape? How does your particular movement, set off alarms among particular birds who then, alarm deer nearby, who then actually notify the bobcat? And how can you tune into all that? Again, this is what native peoples have done for generations. It's what allowed them to move stealthily across the landscape far more than we do today, but it's something we can relearn, right? Fortunately, it wasn't a completely lost art, and the science is now catching up to this. And then just some other subjects too, like foraging, how to understand some of the most common edible plants, when the time is to harvest them, how to prepare them, how to differentiate them from dangerous lookalikes that are potentially poisonous. So again, just some really practical things. I do these with my kids. It's fantastic to do with family. It's really fun. It's a bonding experience as well as you're getting to learn something. Okay. And if you're into, eating really the true meaning of the word, more organic, it's a great way to do that as well, and learn how to maybe supplement your diet with wild plants, or also even if you want to take that in other directions, medicinally speaking. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, either in the chat or you can put it in the Q&A. And so specifically tonight, if you have questions about baseline behavior, non-baseline behavior, maybe something you saw that, you didn't quite understand, or other aspects of bird language. So let me see what's in here right now. Okay, so I've got one here. Okay, I did a podcast, probably about a year and a half ago, with Dr. Kate Sieving at University of Florida. And she's actually the one that I sort of my mentor professor when I was designing this course. And what her specialty is that she, and there's a couple other professors as well in this, who actually went on and started studying parrots. And parrots are not parrots, just to be absolutely clear about that. Parrots are titmice and chickadees. And what they learned is that they're what's called the guardians or sentries of the forest. And what they mean by that is that all the other birds listen to them. Okay, when they are in whether it's a wilderness setting or just in your backyard or a park, when they start alarming, they sound an alarm, everybody else pays attention to them. So the importance of that is that you can actually tune in and watch that yourself, right? Because a lot of times when you go out and, some people will play particular bird songs or alarms, and birds may respond or not respond. But when you actually go out and do, if you're a birder, and, you obviously know about pishing, right? Which is a call, the psh, 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 psh. And for many decades, people had no idea why birds responded to this. And it was actually one of her researchers on one of her projects who figured out, after doing recordings in various regions around the world, that in a couple of regions, particularly in the tropics and in South America, where they don't really have parrots, birds didn't respond to that sound. And what they determined from that is that when they did an acoustical analysis of that, it very closely matched that pishing sound to the sounds that parrots make when they're alarming. And so they learned from that's why when birders make that sound, all these birds come nearby. And I do it a lot of times with my kids just so they can see. And it's amazing how they'll come because you are a parrot, in effect. They're listening to you alarming and they want to know what's going on. And so her work, she has a couple of PDFs posted online. I'm not sure about the audio. What I'll do is I'll check into that. I know some of the recordings are out there. You could also look her up online, Dr. Katie Sieving at the University of Florida. And if you go to her lab, you could look up, see if she has some recordings on there, or you could actually just probably email her, and I'm sure she can point you in the right direction. But if I find out any more about that, I will send out a note about that. Let's see. Okay, a couple other questions here. Do you suggest keeping a journal and recording observations? Absolutely. And this is something that I cover in the course and in the lessons I teach. So I have, in addition to the weekly naturalist training program, and it's usually about once a month, I do a bird language or animal language lesson. I also have a separate just bird language course. And I have a full course, and I also have broken it down into smaller components. And so, yes, a big part of that is there's an analysis exercise every week, and it teaches you a different aspect of bird language. And then it suggests that you go out and do what's called a bird sit. And a bird sit is basically, and I have some videos on this on my YouTube channel, that show how to do this. But when you go out and you sit for some period of time, it can be only a few minutes, but I would recommend, if you can, to do probably a minimum of 15 minutes. Reason for that is usually you create a disturbance, so you're dropping right in and something's going on, and it takes a while for things to settle down. And then, yes, you make observations over that next period of time, anywhere from 20 minutes up to an hour if you want. Usually you want to break it into about 5 to 10 minute intervals, and during those intervals, take notes. And generally speaking, it's not that you necessarily want to record every single bird that you heard, their behavior, although sometimes if there's not much activity, you may do that. But what you can do is, in addition to recording that, you can make a map if you're going to the same area every time, and then you can actually draw on it. And then, you can draw on, hey, this bird, and I show you the conventions on that in the course of how to do that, because these are standardized conventions. John Young came up with them. And so you can actually map it out. Bird was singing here, and, it took off in this direction or did this specific alarm shape. And you can write it all out. And then it's a great learning thing, because then you can compare your maps over time. And just the fact is, we all know, we were taught in school, and when you write things down, it just reinforces the learning. You pay more attention to it. So that's a great exercise to do a bird sit. And so in my course, I give an analysis exercise every week of what to look for during a sit. And you won't necessarily observe it that particular week, but it just gets you in the habit of doing that. And fantastic way to learn. And what's really powerful, again, I go over this in the advanced version of my course, is when you do that as a group. It's called a group sit. Occasionally I teach these in-person classes where I do that, because then you get to leverage everyone's observations, and the learning is exponential from that. So let's see, another question here is a list of resources or handout to do more research. Well, there are some resources online. John Young has a really good one on his, I think if you just go to birdlanguage.com, I think it's still up there. It's also in his book, What the Robin Knows, which I'll type in here. He actually gives specific examples of those baseline behaviors or sound. There's actually called 4 sounds of baseline, and then there's the 5th sound of alarm. And so that's why I recommended the e-version of his book, because you can listen to that in line while you're reading the book. I'm normally I kind of like old school books, paper, but this is maybe one exception. However, if you go to, I believe it's birdlanguage.com, if you go to that website, he actually has, for a number of species, he has those, oops, sorry, I misspelled that. Forgive me for the typo. I believe that's correct, birdlanguage.com. If you go on there, he has a library, and he categorizes it by species and the different type of baseline or non-baseline sound for each species. But then he also just gives it by the type of sound itself. So you can search it either way. That's a great resource. Again, you can also just Google Dr. Sieving, Dr. Green from the University of Montana. There's a couple of other professors on there. You'll probably find some things on there as well. But I would start with John Young. Again, I have things on my website, and I do some podcasts. Unfortunately, well, the good news is we're catching up to ancient knowledge about bird language. And there's also, I will post them again. There's a couple of articles that have been written. One was in the New York Times a few years ago about bird language. There's been a story on NPR as well that will come up. But yeah, it's not a lot. So we're hoping to change that, but that'll be hopefully get you started. So someone asked here, what's the difference between songbirds and water birds? It really, the difference is simply that with songbirds, you're going to get consistent song, right? Given their passerines, right? So that's what they do, they sing. And because of that, you can distinguish between when they're singing and their other types of other types of calls, which we call contact calls, sometimes companion calls, and alarm calls. Okay. So that's probably the biggest reason. The other thing is habitat. With water birds, obviously, it's just harder to get out there and see them. I mean, certainly bird language applies. You can see let's say ducks, when they're out in water, and then all of a sudden, here comes an incoming attack of a hawk, and boom, you see them all take wing at once, or, maybe somebody comes up in a boat, or a hunter. So you can, but you're not going to get all the vocalizations that you would, the different types of vocalizations. Okay. Not saying you can't learn bird language from seagulls, but it's just not where I would start. But even if you do live near water, if you live near fresh water, obviously there's going to be a shore line all around it. And even if you live on the sea, on a beach, you're going to have habitat generally behind you. So that's the other reason, is that it's accessible to anyone and everyone. Okay, let's see another question here. Behavior. Oh, this is a good question. Behavioral differences with observing birds at a feeder in a more natural foraging habitat. Okay. There are some differences. Generally speaking, a feeder, I don't want to say it can mimic a natural food source. Let's say that you have an insect hatch or something that draws a lot of different birds. Certainly that can sort of act like a feeder. You're going to have generally more territorial aggression. I mean, almost every time you watch a feeder, there's going to be some birds that come in and there's a pecking order, right? Usually the bigger species went out. One of the biggest issues with feeders, though, is that I'm not saying they're bad. And obviously, songbirds are kind of in a dire situation all over the world. So I'm not against feeding them. But what happens in many cases is that they become an attractant, a magnet for particularly accipiters. And, oftentimes they'll just start picking them off at feeders. So, and there's other more complex behaviors that will come in. And again, this is some behavior Dr. Sieving just in the last year or two has noted that birds will do tricks on other birds. For instance, parrots will sometimes vocalize alarms near a feeder in order to trick other birds to get them to leave, because they know other birds listen to them. It's really devious. It's sort of I think she's termed that, and some related behaviors, fight club behavior. So actually, feeders can be a really good place to watch, because when there is an attack, you will know it. I mean, you'll see it instantly because they're going to take flight. Obviously, they can also attract cats. Cats love to pick off birds at feeders. So I'm not sure it necessarily changes their natural behavior, but it does cause some other considerations, I guess, is the way I would put it. Okay, I have time. Let's see if there's a few more here. Okay, yeah. Here's a question about dogs who come to a feeder. Yeah, and some birds aren't scared of them, but there are other species that are terrified of them. Okay, so that's a great question. And birds of different species have different tolerances for threats, and that can also vary among individuals. And so even among, dogs typically, and I'm talking about domestic dogs here, not wild dogs. Most of them, there are a few exceptions to this, but, are not very good bird hunters. Okay. Now that's not the case with foxes or coyotes. Okay. It's very different. So some birds may just not have a tolerance for any type of canine because of that association, because they are predators, right? Other birds who are maybe a little more brave do, they know the difference between a wild canine and a domestic canine, or simply they may know that particularly in certain situations, dogs are just not very good hunters, or canines aren't in general, compared to cats, certainly compared to hawks. Okay. And again, it goes back to that conservation of energy principle. And this is particularly true of feeders. If you have a feeder that, let's say, is 5 feet off of the ground, and again, it depends on the dog, but many dogs, particularly smaller dogs, and even, bigger, heavier dogs, obviously, aren't going to be able to get up there. Birds know that they're not a threat, and so there's no point in wasting energy. Okay. Again, some species, other species are more nervy, as they say. Cats are a little different, obviously, because cats, athletically speaking, can jump much higher than most dogs, certainly for their body weight ratio, and so they're more of a threat. But even in the case of felines, of canines, or excuse me, of cats like that, house cats in particular, they're not going to go farther than they need to. If 6 feet is more than enough out of the distance of the cat, then they're not going to waste energy and go above that. So it's really on a case by case basis. And the final thing I'll say about that is that actually birds get to know individuals and whether they are a threat or not. So there's some dogs they might be scared of and take off. Other ones they won't. Let's say a dog that's more bred to, let's say, be a bird hunter, and I'm using that more from a human hunting standpoint in terms of retrieving birds that have been killed already. But they have good instincts. They're very athletic. So, like a Labrador, right, might elicit, a much greater response than a Shih Tzu. But even between two labs, one might be known as dangerous, and be more aggressive. Another one might not be, and they may get a different response. Or birds are really smart. They're so much smarter than we give them credit for. That old comment about, when you're sort of a pejorative, when you call someone a bird brain, is really a misnomer. They have very dense neurons in their brain. And they even know when, based on the behaviors, whether a dog or a cat, for that matter, is hunting or it's not hunting. And sometimes it's obvious whether it's stalking or not. And they'll treat them differently accordingly. Okay. And so it really depends. There's no one set answer on that. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give you, actually, if you just go on my homepage, you can see everything there. And I will actually grab a link here. Bear with me 1 second, and I'll grab a link to the bird language course. Someone asked for that. Actually, and I'll give the general link here because it has a link to all of the courses. Okay. And then I'll also put the link in for the Naturalist training program. There's 2 versions of this. The actual premium version in there gives you access for my entire library. It costs more. It's an annual membership. It comes down to a per monthly cost, but you pay for a year, but you get access to every one of my courses for a full year. So that includes tracking. That includes there's a foraging course that's actually embedded inside of the wilderness survival course, and a bird language course. So it's incredible value, but it's also if you just want the core, the weekly lessons, that's in there as well. So let's see. And I'm not sure, someone asked about seeing this chat first, but I will be posting a replay of this and sending it out to everyone of what we did tonight, what we talked about. Let me see if there's any other questions in here. Okay. I don't see any more. Let me do one last thing here. So sorry, there's the link to the membership. And I'm sorry, I think I sent the one earlier to just someone specifically. So let me send this out to everyone here. So that's a link to my bird language courses. And you can just go to my website as well. Someone's late on their birthday. Well, I can relate to that. Let's see here. Let me see if there's any other. Someone said, asked a question about aerial. I'm not. Let's see. Do birds alert differently on ground predators versus aerial predators? Yes, absolutely, they do. And that's again that gets into more details in the course. But ground predators, the way to say that is there's a specific signature alarm for every type of predator, no matter whether it's ground or aerial. Okay, and so almost now, not quite to the species level, but there's specific alarm patterns, or what John Young used the term shapes for, let's say, wild for canines, right? And then there's a specific alarm shape, and a shape includes both visible and audible auditory components for felines. And then there's one for hunting accipiters, and then there's one for larger buteos, right? And so you can learn to recognize those. And there's a little bit of crossover here or there, but there are specific patterns. And so, yeah, that's exactly what's covered in the course. Let's see here. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else. Let's see. Yeah, so again, I will be posting this, sending out in the next couple of days. I'll get this out to everyone. And again, regardless of whether you sign up for one of my programs or not, I just can't emphasize enough what bird language does. It just changes everything. One last thing here. Somebody asked for patterns in sound or posture. Yes, absolutely. There is a big distinction between that. So again, during the course, we go over specific postures that birds take. Now, there's a range of that. Posture may be not just one individual, but the whole relationship, if you will, and maybe rather than posture, I'll say positioning of a group of individuals of different species. In terms of sound, each one has its own distinctive alarm or set of alarms by species. Okay, so that varies. Although there are one or two in particular, some commonalities like the zeet, or what we call the death cry. A number of different species do that. So, but again, that's something. Again, bird language. The best thing about bird language, besides what you learn, is that the ability to learn is that it's something you can start, and you don't have to have any prior knowledge. You can start picking up immediately. And it's something, even if you know all this information, it's like it's just ongoing. You can just keep learning more and more. And I tell people in my office here, I had a couple of scenarios recently, one in particular where I saw this bird doing this particular type of alarm behavior right on a ledge outside my office window. And I took a photo of it and I posted it online, and I should have had the video going, because just like 3 or 4 minutes later, here came a kestrel slamming into the window trying to catch that bird. And I told a couple of people about it. So it's just incredible. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, what some of you do with it, and, what the science continues to do with it.